The hall was heavy with music and light, but at our table there was only silence. I sat beside my grandson Lucas, smoothing the collar of his small suit. He leaned close, his little hand gripping mine tightly. "Grandma, do not let Dad drink the champagne. Mom put flour in it." The words were whispered, innocent and soft, but they struck me like a blade. "Flour," he said. But I understood at once this was not flour. Before us, the groom's glass stood tall and gleaming. My son Michael's glass. I did not move. My breath caught in my chest. The boy's eyes, wide and trusting, looked only at me. He had no idea what his words meant. Across the table, the champagne bubbles rose and burst, soundless as a warning bell only I could hear. My hands trembled under the tablecloth. I pressed Lucas's small fingers between mine, steadying myself with the warmth of his palm. For a moment the hall disappeared. The chatter of guests, the clink of cutlery, the laughter of cousins, all faded into a hollow silence inside me. I had raised Michael alone since the day his father walked out. Nights of double shifts at the hospital cafeteria. Mornings of rushing to get him to school before my shift at the library. Every winter coat, every new pair of shoes, every rent check. It had been my hands that provided. And when Lucas was born, when the seizures began in the middle of the night, I was the one who held his small body through the storm. I had memorized the hiss of hospital machines, the dry scent of antiseptic, the way a nurse's eyes softened when she saw a grandmother refusing to leave her grandson's bedside. All those years I thought I was building something steady. That maybe today, at Michael's second wedding, I could sit in peace, dressed in my blue silk dress, proud of the man he had become. I thought the storms had finally passed. But peace had slipped through my fingers. It sat now in that glass, sparkling and poisonous. I looked at Michael. His face was flushed with happiness, or maybe wine. He laughed with his friends, unaware of the danger wresting inches from his hand. He wore the same crooked smile he had as a boy when he brought me drawings from school, eager for my approval. I had never wanted anything more than his safety. And now, on the day meant to begin a new chapter, everything I had guarded, sacrificed, and built was hanging by a thread thinner than a bubble rising in champagne. I shifted my gaze to the head table, where the bride sat with her parents. Vanessa. Perfect hair, perfect posture, perfect smile. A week ago, she had told me in a cutting voice that I was interfering too much in their family matters. She had said Michael was a grown man, that he did not need me shadowing his choices. I had swallowed the insult then, as I had swallowed so many. But now her presence burned my chest like acid. I could not think about myself. I could not think about pride or humiliation. Only about my son and grandson. Lucas still clung to my hand. His trust in me was absolute. His words had carried the warning no one else could hear. I let my eyes wander back to the glass. It looked harmless, elegant, golden liquid catching the chandeliers above. But in that simple object was the sum of all my years. If I failed now, every sacrifice would mean nothing. I thought of the notebooks in my desk drawer, filled with careful lists of expenses. Hospital bills, prescription receipts, late-night taxi fares when Michael could not drive, the electricity payments I had covered when his hours were cut short. Every dollar accounted for, every sacrifice recorded. Those notebooks told the story of my life. Not in poetry but in numbers. Numbers that always began with loss and ended with survival. I could almost hear Henry's voice, Michael's father, the day he left. "You will never manage alone." He had said it with a smirk, tossing the keys onto the kitchen table. I had proven him wrong every day since. And I would prove him wrong again tonight. But as I sat in that glittering hall, surrounded by white flowers and smiling faces, a weight pressed down on me harder than ever before. I was not just managing. I was fighting for breath, for clarity, for the courage to act. My world had collapsed in the space of a whisper. And yet somehow no one else knew. The violinist played a sweet melody. The waiters carried trays of golden hors d'oeuvres. The photographer circled the room, capturing laughter and staged kisses. Everything looked perfect, but perfection was a lie. And lies had brought me to this moment. Lies told in polite voices, lies dressed in white silk gowns, lies that masked danger as celebration. Lucas's small voice echoed in my head. "Grandma, do not let Dad drink the champagne. Mom put flour in it." I tightened my hold on his hand. My heart, though heavy with grief and loneliness, was steadying itself. I had lost too much in my life to lose what mattered most now. Tonight, silence was no longer an option. The music shifted into something brighter, a signal that the toasts would begin soon. I could already see waiters circulating with polished trays, lifting flutes filled to the rim. My eyes returned to Michael's glass, still untouched, still glinting under the chandelier. Every second that passed felt like a countdown. Then she approached. Vanessa's dress shimmered with thousands of tiny sequins that caught the light like scattered glass. She moved between the tables with a smile so gentle that strangers might have mistaken it for kindness. But I knew the edge hidden beneath it. "You worry too much," she said, her voice low enough for only me to hear. She leaned forward, her perfume sharp, cloying. "Allow me. I will take care of the drinks at your table." Her manicured hand reached toward Michael's glass as if it belonged to her. A week ago, those same lips had shaped very different words. "You are interfering again, Evelyn," she had told me, her tone icy. "Michael and I need to build our family without your constant shadow. You need to learn to step back." She had not cared that Lucas was in the room, clutching his toy train, pretending not to hear. Her words had been for me alone, but her message was clear. I was no longer wanted. And yet here she was, smiling sweetly, playing the role of the dutiful bride, pretending to be a hostess instead of a threat. I remembered that moment in her kitchen, when she had slapped my hand away from a pan of soup. "I will handle it," she had snapped, as if I were a servant who had overstepped. The memory settled over this moment like a shadow. I did not move aside. Instead, I reached for the napkin folded neatly at my place setting. My fingers were steady now. I lifted it, spread it over Michael's glass, and slid the stem closer to the center of the table, like sealing a dangerous secret. "This drink will not be touched," I said, my voice clear and even, "until we sort this out." For the first time that night, Vanessa's smile faltered. Her eyes flickered, calculating, as if searching for a softer mask to wear. Around us, guests laughed and clapped at some joke from the head table, unaware of the tension tightening at ours. I felt something shift inside me then. A cold clarity, heavy and solid as stone. For too many years I had remained silent in the face of insults, of doubts, of small humiliations swallowed for the sake of keeping peace. I had told myself it was better not to make scenes, better to carry the weight quietly. But silence had brought me here, to a moment where my son's life depended on whether I would speak. Vanessa leaned closer again, her voice sharpening though her smile stayed fixed. "You are embarrassing yourself. It is only champagne. Do not start trouble in front of everyone." Her words brushed against me like knives, but they no longer cut. The fear that once silenced me was gone. I met her gaze directly. "Then you will not object to me asking for clarity." I lifted my hand slightly, signaling to a passing waiter. "Please send the maitre d' to this table," I said in the calm, formal tone I used when speaking to hospital administrators years ago. The waiter blinked, glanced at Vanessa, then nodded quickly. Around us, whispers began to stir. A few heads turned, eyes flicking toward our table with faint curiosity. I could almost hear the first ripples of gossip forming. Vanessa straightened, still trying to smile, but her jaw was rigid now. "You are ruining everything again with your suspicions," she hissed, her voice barely audible over the music. Michael looked up then, startled, as though only now realizing something was unfolding. His eyes darted between us, confusion clouding his face. I could see the embarrassment rising in him, the same embarrassment he had shown as a boy when I had scolded him too loudly in public. "Mom," he muttered, "please not now. Not now." The words I had heard in 100 variations across the years. "Not now, Mom, I am busy. Not now, Mom, it is complicated. Not now, Mom, I can handle it myself. But if not now, then when?" When the glass was already drained, when the damage was irreversible. The maitre d' arrived, his dark suit pressed, his expression polite but wary. "Is there a problem, madam?" "Yes," I replied evenly. "I would like the children's meals replaced immediately, and the drinks at this table inspected before anyone consumes them." His brows lifted slightly, but he did not argue. He gestured to a waiter to clear the plates. Vanessa's composure cracked then. She rose from her chair, her voice sharper, louder, designed for the crowd. "This is ridiculous," she declared, her hand clutching the back of Michael's chair. She is paranoid, making a spectacle, trying to ruin our wedding dinner. The whispers grew louder. Guests leaned toward each other, eyes widening, mouths hidden behind napkins. I could see the pity in some faces, the skepticism in others. Michael flushed red, shifting uncomfortably under the scrutiny. "Mother, please," he whispered, his voice pleading. "You are making a scene." I kept my gaze fixed on the maitre d'. "Do as I requested," I said firmly. The pressure mounted like a storm. Vanessa painted me as a hysterical woman, grasping for attention, destroying what should have been a perfect evening. Michael looked torn, his loyalty divided, his embarrassment clear. Guests whispered, and the air thickened with judgment. But my hand stayed on the covered glass, steady, immovable. For too many years I had given everything, my health, my money, my silence, for the illusion of harmony. Tonight, all of it had narrowed to this one act, refusing to let my son's hand touch a poisoned drink, and no amount of whispering, shaming, or pressure would move me from it. The maitre d' hesitated, glancing at Michael for approval, but I did not let my hand leave the glass. I repeated, calm but firm, "The children's meals and these drinks must be replaced." A hush spread across the hall. Even the violinist faltered, a note dragging too long before the melody resumed. The pressure was thick, pressing against my chest, but I did not move. Vanessa's voice rose again, trembling with fury. "She is inventing stories, humiliating us in front of everyone." She clutched Michael's arm, trying to pull him to her side. "Tell her to stop, Michael. Tell her to leave it alone." Before my son could speak, a new voice cut through the noise. "I need to say something." It was Grace, Lucas's nanny. She stood a few steps away, her hands twisting the strap of her purse. She was not a woman of confidence. She usually kept to the background, quiet, reliable, unnoticed. But now her voice shook the air. "When we were preparing earlier," she said, her eyes flicking nervously between Vanessa and me, "I saw Vanessa in the kitchen. She was scattering some kind of white powder on the counter. I thought it was flour and offered to clean it. She stopped me sharply and said, 'Do not touch it. I will handle it myself.'" The guests fell into silence so deep that even the clinking of cutlery stopped. Vanessa's smile was gone now, her jaw clenched, her eyes narrowing at Grace. "That is a lie," she snapped. "A desperate attempt to ruin my day. How much did Evelyn pay you to say this?" My spine stiffened. The accusation hit like a slap, but I did not respond. It was the same tactic I had endured for years, twisting suspicion back onto me, making me appear bitter, manipulative, hysterical. But tonight, the weight of truth was no longer mine alone to carry. And then from across the hall another voice rose. Male, hesitant but steady. "Excuse me." A young man stood near the far tables, his phone in hand. His name was Brandon, a distant cousin of Vanessa's, if I remembered correctly. He shifted awkwardly, raising his phone higher. "I think I accidentally recorded something. I was filming the room earlier, just the decorations, but I might have caught something else on video." Every eye turned to him. Even the waiters froze. Brandon tapped the screen, his face pale, and the video began to play. The sound of chatter filled the speakers, blurred images of flowers and chairs at first. Then the lens caught Vanessa near the drinks table. She glanced around quickly, her movements sharp, tense. Her hand slipped into her clutch, pulled out a small packet, and tipped its contents into a single champagne flute. Michael's flute. The room gasped as one, a wave of sound crashing over the silence. I felt Lucas's hand squeeze mine tighter. He buried his face against my arm, as if he knew too much for his young age. Vanessa's voice broke through, high-pitched and furious. "This is absurd. That video proves nothing. It could be sugar or nothing at all. You cannot prove intent." But no one was listening. The image froze on the screen. Vanessa, hand poised over the glass, her eyes darting side to side. The evidence was undeniable. My son rose slowly to his feet. His face had drained of color, his hands trembling as he pushed the chair back. For a long moment he said nothing, his eyes fixed on his bride. Then his voice came low, cold, cutting through the hall. "You wanted to poison me." Gasps, whispers, a few cries from distant relatives. Chairs scraped as guests shifted, uncertain whether to flee or to stay. Vanessa reached for him, Her face twisted between fury and desperation. Michael, no, it is not what it looks like. Please, they are twisting everything. Your mother, that nanny, even my cousin. Michael pulled his arm away. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The weight of his words landed heavier than any shout. Security, he said, nodding toward the hall entrance. Two men in black suits moved forward swiftly. Vanessa tried to pull back, tried to clutch at her dress, at Michael's arm, at anything, but the evidence was already on the screen, replaying in brutal silence for all to see. As they led her away, her cries echoed through the hall, raw and frantic. You will regret this. She is behind it all. Evelyn made you turn against me. She is jealous, bitter, old. But no one listened anymore. The hall, filled moments earlier with light and laughter, was now frozen in shock. Eyes turned toward me, some wide with sympathy, others filled with a heavy, painful understanding. I sat very still, Lucas pressed against me, my hand still resting firmly on the untouched glass beneath its napkin. The screen went dark, but the image lingered in every mind. Vanessa's voice, her protests, her fury. All of it faded as security escorted her out of the hall. The doors shut behind her with a heavy thud. Silence settled over the guests. No one reached for their glasses now. The bubbles in the untouched champagne seemed obscene, mocking. Michael stood at the center of it all, shoulders bent, his eyes on the floor. When he finally looked up, his gaze found me. For a moment I thought I saw the boy he once was. 8 years old, feverish in a hospital bed, clutching my hand because he trusted I could keep him safe. Mother, he said, his voice rough, forgive me. I doubted you. My throat tightened, but I gave no speech. I only nodded once, steady, the way I had nodded countless times when a doctor explained a treatment or a teacher handed me another list of supplies. Facts were enough. Grace, still shaken, moved closer to Lucas, wrapping her arm around his shoulders. He leaned into her without hesitation. For the first time that night, I allowed myself to breathe. He was safe. Around us, guests whispered, but the tone had changed. There was no pity now, no scorn. Only the quiet shock that comes when truth pierces a gathering meant for pretense. Michael placed his untouched glass down on the table, far from reach. His hand brushed over the napkin I had laid across it, a gesture of final recognition. The celebration was over. No music could restart, no toast could follow. But life remained. That was enough. I sat straighter, my hand resting on Lucas's small back. The child's steady breathing was the only rhythm I trusted in that moment. Family, I thought, is not the one who sprinkles glitter into your cup for appearances. It is the one who shields your glass from danger. The hall emptied slowly, guests slipping out in murmurs and lowered gazes. Some avoided looking at me, ashamed that they had believed Vanessa's act. Others approached quietly, offering small touches on my arm, hushed words. You were right. I am so sorry. Thank God you noticed. Their sympathy meant little. Words could not undo the years of being painted as intrusive, overbearing, a shadow at the edge of my own family. Michael remained standing, his face pale, lips pressed tight. He did not rush to follow Vanessa, nor did he try to explain her actions away. His silence was his admission, his first step toward the truth. When he finally sat beside me, his hand brushed over mine. Mother, he said softly, I owe you my life, and I owe you an apology. I met his eyes. You owe yourself honesty, I replied. He swallowed, his gaze dropping again. His fingers traced the rim of the poison glass before pushing it farther away. Grace guided Lucas toward us, her hand gentle on his shoulder. The boy climbed onto the seat beside me and pressed against my arm. His small voice, muffled against my sleeve, carried the weight of the evening. Grandma, I told you. Yes, you did, I whispered, kissing the crown of his head. You saved him. The child's eyes fluttered closed, exhaustion finally claiming him. He trusted us now, trusted the adults at the table to keep him safe. That trust was a responsibility heavier than any glass of champagne. The staff moved cautiously around us, clearing plates, whispering among themselves. The maitre d' returned with an uncertain look. Madam, do you wish us to continue with dessert service? I shook my head. This celebration is finished. He bowed slightly, relieved perhaps, and disappeared again. One by one, guests gathered their coats, whispered goodbyes, and slipped into the night. The room emptied of noise until only the faint scrape of chairs remained. Michael stayed seated, staring at the tablecloth as though trying to read meaning in its folds. "I wanted so badly to believe her," he admitted. "I thought she was giving Lucas stability, that she was building a home for us. I ignored the small things. I did not want to see them." I listened without interrupting. He needed to hear his own words out loud, to confront the cracks he had plastered over for too long. "I will make this right," he said at last, his jaw tightening. "For Lucas. For you." I reached for my purse, resting it firmly in my lap. "Your son is what matters now. Everything else can be rebuilt. But never again at the expense of silence." Grace nodded, her expression solemn. "I will stay with Lucas tonight," she said. "He should not wake up alone." Michael's eyes glistened. He clasped her hand in gratitude before releasing it quickly, ashamed of how often he had leaned on others without acknowledgement. By the time the last guest left, only we remained. Michael, Lucas asleep against my side, Grace close by. The hall looked stripped now, decorations hollow, flowers wilted in the harsh overhead light. I thought of the years I had spent covering bills, signing checks, staying awake at hospital bedsides, fighting quietly against shadows no one else admitted existed. Tonight had exposed the truth, not with fury but with evidence. That was enough. Outside, the night was calm. Cool air brushed my face as we stepped through the hotel's glass doors. A soft rain had begun, tapping gently on the pavement. Michael walked beside me, his hand hovering near Lucas's shoulder though not quite touching. "I will never forget this," he said. His voice was steadier now, more like the boy I once knew, less like the man trapped in someone else's game. I did not answer. Forgiveness was not given in words but in boundaries drawn, kept, and respected. We reached the car. Grace helped settle Lucas into the back seat, tucking his small jacket around him. The child sighed in his sleep, his chest rising and falling in a rhythm that steadied my own. As Michael started the engine, I turned my gaze to the window. Streetlights reflected on the wet asphalt, long golden streaks stretching into the distance. For the first time in years, I felt the weight in my chest begin to lift. The next morning I rose early, as I always had. I brewed coffee in my quiet kitchen, the familiar hum of the machine grounding me. The blue silk dress from the night before hung neatly on the back of a chair. Its fabric held the memory of what had happened, but it was just cloth now. I carried my coffee to the small garden behind the house. The soil smelled damp from the night's rain. My roses were beginning to bloom, pale pink and steady. I knelt, touched the petals, and let the silence settle around me. I did not need crowds or applause. I did not need anyone to call me brave. I had protected what mattered, and I had spoken when silence was no longer safe. Family is not the one who sprinkles glitter into your cup for appearances. It is the one who shields your glass from danger. As the morning light spread across the garden, Lucas's laughter drifted faintly from the house. He had woken safe, unafraid. I closed my eyes and let that sound be my peace. If you are hearing my voice right now, it means you stayed until the end, and I want to thank you sincerely. Your support gives me strength to continue sharing these stories. Write me in the comments what you felt while listening, and where you are from. Do not forget to like and subscribe. New stories are already on their way to you.